to the channel. In this video I'm going to look at how to drive in mist and fog. Before I do that though, and I know I'm in danger of boring you with this, so I'll keep it really brief. Just a quick reminder that my latest book has just been published. It's available on Amazon. It's the second edition of Advanced and Performance Driving. If you had the first edition, this has got a few new chapters in there. It's been reformatted, it's got links to the YouTube videos and all that kind of stuff. So it's available on Amazon. I'll put a link in the description below if you want to get a copy. Perfect timing for Christmas. And it's probably the last time I'll bore you with that in one of these videos, so thanks for bearing with me. Anyway, mist and fog. I'll warn you in advance that this includes one of my pet hates, so actually this is going to be quite cathartic for me making this video. Gives me the chance to talk about my little pet hate, which is the misuse of high intensity fog lights.
Your fog lamps are on. Your fog lamps are on. There's no fog.
So today in Bolton, it's quite misty actually. I wouldn't quite call this fog yet. Visibility at the moment is about, I don't know, 300 or 400 yards, something like that, 300 or 400 meters. But it's certainly misty, and you know, the effect of that is twofold for us. First, it makes us more difficult to be seen, and secondly, it makes it more difficult for us to see where we're going. So there are some adjustments you need to make to your driving, and I'm going to look at those in a bit more detail in this video. Let's start with lighting. The first thing that you need to do when it's foggy or misty, daytime or nighttime, irrespective of the time of day, is switch on your low beam headlights. Not your main beam, but your low beam headlights, dipped beam. Now it's really important that you actually physically go and switch them on. Now a lot of us these days have cars with automatic headlights, and if you look at the switch in this car, that's the setting off to the left with a little A next to it, and I just tend to leave it in that all the time. And what that does is, as it gets darker, it switches the headlights on for you. It measures the ambient light, and it also switches them on when you go into a tunnel or somewhere dark during the day. And those work from a sensor, probably somewhere behind the mirror, somewhere on the front of the windscreen, and that sensor is measuring how light or how dark it is outside. The important thing to remember is that's all it's measuring. It's not measuring how good the visibility is. So in daylight conditions, if it's foggy or even thick fog, you leave your headlights on automatic setting, there's a good chance they won't come on. And it's really important to have your dipped beam headlights switched on when it's foggy. Puts your tail lights on. Unlike your daytime running lights, which quite often don't put the tail lights on, your dipped headlights will run your tail lights, and instantly you are much more visible to everybody else that's out there. Now when it's foggy or misty at night, you might be tempted to start to use main beam to help you with your view, and it might get a little bit darker later on, and I might give you a demonstration of that as to why you shouldn't do that. The problem with main beam is that it reflects back at you off the fog, and you get this white out, this white sheet in front of you, and it can be a bit mesmerizing. It draws you in, so it's important not to use main beam at night when it's foggy. It won't illuminate your way any better. All it'll do is reflect the light back at you from the mist or the fog. You've got to remember, with mist or fog, it's just tiny little droplets of water hanging in the air, and they will reflect a lot of that light back in your face, and it makes it much more difficult to see where you're going. So stick with dip beam even at night on unlit roads. If it's foggy, dip beam is better than main beam. And now we come on to my little pet hate, high intensity fog lights.
There's no fog. No fog.
Oh! Now, high intensity fog lights are designed to be used when the visibility, please remember this, but the visibility is less than 100 meters. And at the moment I've got about 300 to 400 meters visibility. I can see the tail lights of the car in front. But the car in front has done what a lot of people do in this weather. They look outside the car, they see that there's some mist about and go, right, it's foggy. And they switch the high intensity rear fog lights on. And the problem with misusing high intensity fog lights is, you know, as I catch up with this vehicle in front, they start to dazzle me, they start to get quite bright in my face, and also they can mask the brake lights. By which I mean, if you look at it on this little video I've made of this car, the brake lights become much less obvious. You can still see the brake lights obviously, but The trouble with the high intensity lights is that I tend to be looking away from the high intensity lights, because what I don't want to get is that little flash on my retina, that little blind flash, and if you stare at high intensity lights, then that's what can happen. Now, I'm not saying that high intensity rear fog lights, and we're talking about rears at the moment, I'm not saying that they are a bad thing. In genuine foggy conditions, and by which I mean visibility less than 100 metres, in genuine foggy conditions, they will make your vehicle more visible from the rear from further away, and that's what you want. You want people to be able to see you from further away. Especially on faster roads and motorways, you want people to be able to see you at the earliest opportunity. But what I also want you to bear in mind is that you should use your rear fog lights, your rear high intensity fog lights, intelligently. Now I'm getting to a point now, I've come up towards Edgeworth because it's up in the hills and I knew that the fog would be a bit thicker up here. I've got to a point where visibility is bordering on 100 metres. And looking behind, I can't see anybody behind me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch my high intensity rear fog lights on now. And it's appropriate to do that because that will allow anybody further back to see me earlier. But I want you to use your high intensity fog lights intelligently. And what that means is we switch them on and off regularly when it's appropriate. So if I have a vehicle coming up behind me, if I can see a vehicle coming up behind me and he gets to within about 100 metres of the back of my car, I'm going to switch those high intensity fog lights off. If I can see their dipped headlights behind me, you can be sure that they can see your tail lights at that point. And that way I'm not then at risk of dazzling that driver behind. So I want you to think in terms of using your high intensity fog lights a bit like you use main beam under normal conditions at night on unlit roads. You put your main beam on, but when you see the headlights of somebody coming towards you, you dip your main beam, don't you? So we're not dazzling them. I don't want to dazzle the driver behind because the knock-on effect of that is they may well run in the back of my car. So your high intensity rear fog light, don't just look outside and think, oh, it's foggy, I'll put them on. Think about how thick that fog is. Look at the other vehicles around you, the ones that haven't got the high intensity lights on. Can you see them from a good distance away? If you can, don't put them on. You can see I'm getting, like I said, it was quite cathartic coming out and making this video because I wanted to get this off my chest. It's a really poor element of British driving, is the misuse of those high intensity fog lights. People put them on when it's raining. Don't put them on when it's raining. They're for thick fog and they're for heavy snow, and I mean heavy snow when there's a lot of snow falling, when visibility is reduced to less than 100 metres. Now behind me, I did notice a car just pulling out of a junction behind me, but he's not in sight and I can't see the headlights at all at the moment. So I'm leaving my high intensity fogs on. If he gets a bit closer, if he catches up with me, then I'm going to turn them off. I feel better now I've got that off my chest. What about front fog lights though? What's the advantage of those? Well, I'm going to let you into my way of thinking about fog lights. My view is front fog lights are useless. And it's taken me about 30 years to come to that conclusion. For the last 3 or 4 years, I've decided that front fog lights do absolutely nothing. There's a car coming towards us there with front fog lights on. They're no brighter than your dipped headlights, so they don't make you any more visible. And I think the thinking with them is that they cast a low beam, low down on the road surface, so it illuminates sort of the curb or the near side verge or the white line where it's very close to your car. I've had loads of cars with front fog lights on, and I've used them on and off in fog for 30 years, and I've finally come to the conclusion that they're useless. This car does not have front fog lights on, and it's not under spec. It's got a really good headlight option on it, adaptive headlights, and I don't feel like I'm missing anything at all by not having front fog lights. You might have a different view and you're welcome to share it in the comments below. Some people say that when it really is a pea soup thick fog, that front fog lights can just illuminate that part immediately in front of the car. But if I'm driving out, that's not where I'm looking. I'm not looking immediately in front of the car. I want my eyes up a little bit further. And front fogs don't do anything to improve that vision. In my experience, they make it worse. So my personal advice to you is, if you've got front fog lights fitted, don't use them in fog. They're a waste of time. In fact, they can make your visibility worse. In the same way in the same way that using main beam can make your visibility worse. Now I've just clocked some brake lights up ahead of a vehicle just up ahead of us. So I think we're catching up with them. A lot of people tend to go very, very slowly in conditions like this. Oh, it's turning off. It's got an indicator on and it's turning off. So what else? What else apart from my little pet hate about misuse of fog lights? Well, you need to keep your windscreen clear. You'll notice it's not raining, it is foggy, but it really is just fine droplets of water in the air. And without realising it can mist your windscreen up. So, you know the single wipe function where you tap the wiper down? Manufacturers call that mist, the mist function. And that tends to be what I use when it's like this. I'll just give it a wipe every now and again. If you put it on automatic wipe function, quite often it doesn't really recognise that the wipers need to come on. So do it yourself, just tap it, mist the windscreen, keep washing it every now and again, and also have a good airflow over the inside of your windscreen, because it'd be very easy now in these conditions not to realise that the inside of your windscreen was misting up. And that's happened to me in the past. Forgotten, not put the demister on the inside of the windscreen, gone out and thought, God, it's really foggy. And actually most of it's on the inside of the windscreen. So keep a good airflow, air conditioning on, good airflow over the windscreen. That'll keep good visibility out there. Also, I tend to every now and again put the rear demister on. Again, the clue's in the name. The main reason for that isn't because of the rear window. It's because of its link to the side mirrors. Now, I think BMWs might just have the side mirror heaters on all the time anyway. I'm not sure, but just to be sure, I like to put the rear demister on. So that's the adjustments you should make to your car, the correct intelligent use of fog lights, all that kind of stuff, headlights, dipped headlights. What about how to drive in these conditions? Well, the first thing and the most important thing is there is an overriding safety rule that we should never break. And that is that we've got to be able to stop on our own side of the road in the distance we can see to be clear. And clearly mist or fog in this case, because we're into quite thick fog now, significantly reduces the distance you can see to be clear. So I'm never going any faster than that stopping distance will allow me. In fact, I'm probably doubling it just in case, you know, there's something in the road with no lights on that might be coming in my direction, coming towards me, and I need to take into account their braking distance. So this is a national speed limit road. In good bright conditions, I would easily be doing 60 along here. I'm doing about 38, 40, something like that. And that allows me to easily stop in the distance I can see to be clear. So that's the first point. The next thing is, where are we looking? Well, I still want you to carry on scanning. I want your eyes moving around all over the place. The reason for that is, if you stare and go up into that area of fog right immediately in front of the car, you'll get a little bit hypnotized by it. It just blurs your vision and you find it difficult to focus. So my eyes are moving around. They do go to that spot right in the middle, but I'm also looking to the near side and offside curbs. I'm looking at the snow poles here. When it gets a bit darker, they would reflect my headlights back at me. I'm looking at the very worn white line, and I'm just judging my position in the lane by using my peripheral vision, like the lower peripheral vision down at the bottom of my vision here. Another thing you can do as well is keep the sat nav on, keep it on a scrolling map, and if it gets really, really thick fog and you can't really see in the distance where the road's going, the sat nav's going to tell you. You don't make any decisions off that, and I don't want you staring at the sat nav. But it's worth bearing in mind that will give you a rough idea. One other adjustment that you can make with the vehicle, I forgot to mention this earlier, is that you can turn down the brightness of your instruments and your dials. And you do that, almost every car these days has got a little dial down by the headlight switch, and that tones everything down. So at night, I'm not going to do it during the day because I want them still bright and still so I can see them, but at night, that can really help your night vision. You haven't got these bright distracting lights here, so bear that in mind when it's foggy at night. But during the day, I'm going to leave them on the normal brightness. So I've got to remember, I've still got my high intensity fog lights on. There's a light on the dashboard that tells me that the fog lights are on. And if I pull out and I've got any vehicles behind me, I'm going to be turning them off. But for now, in these conditions, as I turn onto this main road, I'm going to leave them off. Now, when you're following other vehicles in weather conditions like this, it's important you don't just stare at the back of them. That's how a lot of accidents happen in fog. People just get mesmerised, stare at the back, like the rear lights of the car in front. I've said this before, there is no saying that driver in front has got it right. and they may end up having an accident, and if you're just staring at them, you'll get drawn into that same accident or incident. So get your vision around them, look up the near side, do all these forward observation tricks that I've looked at in other videos. I'll put a link in the description below to other videos about observations and planning. But I want, you know, here, yes, I'm aware of the car in front, but I'm looking to the side of him, I'm looking over the top, I'm looking down the near side, checking the mirrors regularly. I always want to be sure that that there isn't somebody coming up behind and I need to turn those high intensity fog lights off. I have got somebody coming up behind me now. As soon as they get any closer, I'm going to turn them off. And there we go, we turn them off now. So yeah, really important that you keep your vision right in front of these vehicles, so you're ready for them to brake or avoid, or you're ready for them, you know what's going to happen, you know what the vehicles in front are going to do before they get to that situation or that hazard or whatever it is. Alright, so that's how to drive on A and B roads, urban roads, rural roads. What about the motorway? Well, fog and mist can be a real hazard on the motorway. You may have seen news stories in the past about large pile-ups in foggy weather on the motorway. Fog really increases the risk on the motorway. Motorways, on the whole, are the safest roads by far. Per mile travelled, motorways are the safest roads in the country. When you start getting fog and mist, especially patchy fog where you go in and out of it, it becomes a real hazard. And that's because people don't make the right adjustments. The first thing you should do on the motorway is extend your following position. If you're following another vehicle, don't get too close to it. Don't stare at the vehicle in front. Do all those observation tricks that I was talking about before. But remember that your speed is sort of masked by the motorway, and it can be masked even more by the mist and the fog. Sitting here doing 70 miles an hour, and I could be, you know, I could be doing 20 miles an hour. Because I'm in and around the rest of the traffic, that speed is masked. So yeah, as soon as you start getting any mist or fog, especially on the motorway where the visibility is seriously reduced, bring your speed down. It may feel safe and comfortable floating into that cloud of mist at 70, 80 miles an hour, but at that speed your braking distance is significantly increased, and if you factor in your reaction time as well, if you come across very slow moving vehicles or stationary vehicles that have had an accident, or a line of stationary vehicles at a blockage or roadworks or something like that, you're going to go in the back of them. And that is, it's, you know, like I say, although there's fairly few accidents on the motorway, that is by far one of the most common causes of accidents. People driving too close, carrying too much speed into fog and mist on the motorway, and not recognising the risk. It's this false sense of security you get on the motorway. It just makes people feel comfortable and safe, and they forget about the fact that they're ploughing along at 70, 80 miles an hour and that they need to make reasonable adjustments for that fog and mist. So that's it for this video. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you got something out of it. Remember my little pet hate there, misuse of high intensity fog lights. Have a think about how you use them. Use them intelligently. Use them like you would use main beam at night. Switch them on and off when it's appropriate. Don't just put them on and leave them on. And don't forget the automatic headlight thing. It's a really big one, that. A lot of people get that wrong. They just assume the headlights are on because it's on the automatic setting and the dashboard's lit up, when actually, you know, there's a good chance that it isn't, and you need to physically switch those lights on yourself. So thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, all that kind of stuff. Go and have a look at the website, reglocal.com. Loads more information there about advanced and performance driving. Don't forget the new book's out. Get yourself a copy of that for Christmas. Treat yourself. And give us a follow on Twitter as well, @reglocal. But for now, thanks very much for watching. Hope you've enjoyed the video. We'll see you next time.